The alpha beast chose its target. The human smiled. Let's see who hunts who. Part 1, The Drop. The ship was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that came before something bad. Kang Do-hyun sat in the pilot chair of the Baekho, his boots resting on the console, his eyes half closed. He was not sleeping. He never really slept. Not the deep kind. Years in the Earth military had taught him to rest with one eye open, and both ears listening. The stars outside the cockpit windows stretched in every direction, like scattered dust, and somewhere out there, a dead world was waiting for them. The hollow screen in the center of the bridge flickered to life, and the face of Commander Tolek appeared. He was Rethian, tall, gray-skinned, with 4 narrow eyes that always looked like they were judging something. Right now, they were judging Do-hyun. "Human," Tolek said, "you have been reassigned." Do-hyun did not move his boots from the console. "Good morning to you too, Commander." Tolek's upper eyes twitched. He did not like humans. Most aliens did not. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Union for 12 years, and in that time, they had earned a reputation for being loud, stubborn, and strangely hard to kill. None of those things impressed the older species. "Planet Korath 9, Tolek continued. "Quarantine class. A Rethian research outpost went dark 11 days ago. 40 researchers. No communication. No distress signal after the first one." The door behind Do-hyun slid open, and Yoon Hana walked in carrying a tablet and a cup of something that smelled like bird coffee. She was the team's xenobiologist and field medic, and she had a habit of reading mission files before anyone else. She had already read this one. "Korath 9 is a death world," Hana said, not looking up from her tablet. "Class 7 jungle planet. Megafauna on every continent. The top predator is something called a Vashta." She turned the tablet around and showed the screen to Do-hyun. The image was blurry, taken from a long distance, but it was enough. A massive creature, 6 legs, covered in layered bone plates like natural armor, with long tendrils hanging from its jaw that glowed faintly blue. It looked like something that had evolved for one single purpose: killing everything it met. "They hunt in packs," Hana added, "led by an alpha. The files say no sentient species has ever successfully colonized the surface." "And yet the Rethians built an outpost there," Do-hyun said. Tolek's expression did not change. "The outpost was shielded, military-grade barriers. It should have been safe." "Should have," Do-hyun repeated. From down the corridor came a loud clang, followed by swearing. A moment later, Park Ji-seok appeared in the doorway, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that was dirtier than his hands. He was the ship's engineer and the team's explosives expert, and he always looked like he had just crawled out of something mechanical. "What did I miss?" he asked. "Death planet," Hana said. "Giant monsters, missing scientists." Ji-seok nodded slowly. "So a normal Tuesday." The last member of the crew arrived without sound, as she always did. Choi Yerin stepped into the bridge from the side corridor, her headset hanging around her neck, her dark eyes calm and watchful. She was the communications officer, and she had a gift for languages. She spoke 11, including 3 alien ones. She also had a gift for noticing things other people missed. "I already picked up the original distress signal from the outpost," Yerin said quietly. "It lasted 9 seconds, mostly screaming. But underneath the noise, there is a sound, a pattern. I think the creatures were communicating during the attack." Tolek looked uncomfortable. "The Vashta are animals. They do not communicate." "The signal says otherwise," Yerin replied, and she said it in a tone that made it clear she was not interested in arguing. Tolek exhaled through his nose slits. "Your mission is simple. Land, assess the outpost, determine if there are survivors, and report back. Do not engage the wildlife. Do not attempt to be heroes. The Union considers this a recovery mission, not a combat operation." Do-hyun finally took his boots off the console and leaned forward. "And if there are survivors? Then bring them out. But the Union will not send a rescue fleet for 4 humans on a quarantine world. You are on your own. The hollow screen went dark. The bridge was quiet again. Jisok looked at Do-hyun. So why are we doing this? Do-hyun stood up and stretched. Because nobody else will. It took 6 hours to reach Korath 9. They saw it through the cockpit window long before the scanners locked on. A planet wrapped in green and gray clouds, glowing faintly at the edges where the sun hit the atmosphere. It looked alive. Not in the way Earth looked alive from space, blue and gentle. This planet looked alive the way a predator looked alive, hungry and watching. The Baco punched through the atmosphere with a shudder. Rain hit the hull like bullets. The jungle below was thick and endless, a sea of dark green broken only by rivers that wound through the canopy like silver veins. Bioluminescent patches glowed between the trees, blue, green, pale gold. And things moved in the canopy. Big things. They landed in a clearing half a kilometer from the outpost. The moment the ramp lowered, the heat hit them like a wall. The air was thick, wet, and smelled like rotting flowers and iron. The jungle noise was deafening. Clicks, howls, hums, and deep rumbling sounds that vibrated in their chests. Do-hyun stepped out first. He always did. They moved through the jungle in a tight formation. Hana tracked biosigns on her scanner. Jisok carried a pack full of charges and devices. Yeren monitored signal traffic. Do-hyun led with his rifle up and his eyes moving. They found the outpost in 20 minutes. Or what was left of it. The outer wall, 3 meters of reinforced alien steel, had been torn open. Not blasted, not melted, torn. Something had gripped the metal and ripped it apart like wet paper. The edges were bent outward in some places and inward in others. This was not one attack. This was a siege. Something had come back again and again until the wall gave in. Inside, the outpost was dark and destroyed. Equipment was smashed. Furniture was scattered. There were claw marks on every surface, some of them a meter long. But there were no bodies. Not one. Hana knelt beside a dark stain on the floor and scanned it. Rethian blood, a lot of it. But no remains. The creatures took them. Took them where? Jisok asked. Nobody answered. Yeren stopped walking. She was staring at her scanner, and her face had gone pale. Do-hyun, she said softly. He looked at her. There is something outside, big. It has been circling the landing zone since we arrived. She swallowed. It is between us and the ship. The jungle outside had gone silent. Every bird, every insect, every creature had stopped making sound at the same time. In the deep wilderness of Korath 9, silence meant only one thing. Something was hunting. And it already knew exactly where they were. The alpha beast chose its target. The human smiled. Let's see who hunts who. Part 2. Chosen. Nobody moved. The silence outside pressed against the walls of the ruined outpost like a living thing, heavy and waiting. Do-hyun raised one hand. A fist, the military signal for stop. And the team froze in place. Yeren kept her eyes on the scanner. The dot on the screen was massive, easily the largest biosign she had ever recorded. It moved slowly around the perimeter of their landing zone in a wide, patient circle. Not rushing, not hesitating, just watching. How big? Do-hyun asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Bigger than anything in the Union files, Yeren replied. If I am reading this correctly, it is at least 15 meters long. Jisok let out a slow breath. That is bigger than the Baco. Do-hyun lowered his hand and looked at Hana. Is it alone? Hana checked her own scanner, switching to a wider range. For now. There are other signatures deeper in the jungle, but they are holding position. Only this one is close. The Alpha, Do-hyun said. It was not a question. They moved deeper into the outpost, away from the torn walls and the open jungle beyond. The sublevels were partially intact. The damage had come from above, and whatever had attacked had not dug down far enough to reach the lowest floors. Do-hyun led them down a narrow stairwell, stepping over broken panels and shattered glass, until they reached a reinforced door at the bottom. It was sealed from the inside. Yeren stepped forward and put her hand on the communication panel beside the door. It was dead, but she pulled a cable from her kit and connected her own device. A few seconds of work, and the speaker crackled. "This is Choi Yeren, communications officer of the human survey vessel Baiko. If anyone is inside, we are here to help." Then a sound, shuffling, the scrape of something heavy being moved. A voice came through the speaker, thin and shaking. "You are real? You are not a recording?" "We are real," Yeren said gently. "Open the door." It took a full minute before the locks disengaged. The door groaned open, and the smell that came out was terrible. Sweat, fear, old food, and the sharp chemical tang of medical supplies. Inside, 3 Rethian scientists sat against the far wall of a storage vault. They were thin, gray-faced, and their 4 eyes were wide with a fear that had not left them in 11 days. The lead scientist was named Vorath. He stood on shaking legs and looked at the 4 humans like he could not believe what he was seeing. "They sent humans?" he said. "They sent 4 humans to a quarantine world." "They sent the only ones who said yes," Do-hyun replied. Hana moved to the survivors immediately, checking their vitals, giving them water and nutrition packs. They were dehydrated and weak, but alive. Ji-seok secured the stairwell above, rigging a basic alarm with wire and a small charge. While Hana worked, Vorath told them what had happened. The Rethian research team had been studying the Vashta for 2 years from behind the outpost's shields. They had observed the creatures, cataloged their behavior, mapped their territory. They believed the Vashta were intelligent but primitive, dangerous animals, nothing more. They were wrong. "The Alpha began watching us back," Vorath said. His hands were trembling. "At first, we did not notice. It would sit at the edge of the tree line for hours, perfectly still, just observing. We thought it was simple curiosity. It came when we changed shifts. It came when we lowered the shields for maintenance. It was learning our schedule." Hana looked up from her medical kit. "It was studying you." "Yes," Vorath's voice was hollow. "It learned when we were weakest. It learned which sections of the wall had the thinnest shielding. It learned that we panicked when the lights went out. And then one night, it attacked. Not randomly. It hit the power generators first, then the communication array, then the walls. In that order, it cut us off, blinded us, and opened us up like a container." The room was quiet. Even Ji-seok had stopped working and was listening. 40 of us, Vorath continued. 37 died in the first night. The 3 of us made it down here and sealed the door. We have been here since. Do-hyun processed this in silence. Then he asked, "The Alpha, it leads the pack?" "It does more than lead," Vorath said. "The others do not act without its signal. Kill the Alpha, and the pack scatters. But no one has ever killed an Alpha Vashta. They are too fast, too armored, too intelligent." Do-hyun nodded and turned to Ji-seok. "Set up a perimeter. Charges, motion sensors, everything you have. We camp here tonight." Night came fast on Korath 9. One moment the sky was gray-green through the torn roof of the outpost, and the next it was black. The bioluminescent plants in the jungle glowed brighter in the darkness, casting the world in shades of blue and pale green. It would have been beautiful if it were not so dangerous. Ji-seok had done his work. The perimeter was set, a ring of small explosive charges and sensor wires around the outpost, designed to alert and deter. The team took positions near the main breach in the wall, watching the jungle beyond. For an hour, nothing happened. The jungle sounds returned slowly, the clicks and hums of smaller creatures. Hana monitored the biosigns. The large signatures deeper in the jungle had not moved. Then all at once, the sound stopped again. Yeren saw it first. Her breath caught in her throat, and she grabbed Do-hyun's arm. He followed her gaze. It was standing at the tree line. The Alpha Vashta was enormous. Even from 50 meters away, its size was overwhelming. 6 thick legs supported a body covered in overlapping bone plates that looked like ancient stone armor. Its head was broad and flat, with a jaw wide enough to swallow a person whole. From beneath that jaw hung dozens of thin tendrils that glowed electric blue, and they moved constantly, tasting the air, reading the electromagnetic field of everything around it. Its eyes, 2 of them, set deep in the armored skull, caught the dim light and reflected it back like polished metal. They were locked on the group of humans at the outpost wall. The Rethian survivors saw it, and immediately began to shake. Vorath grabbed Da-hun's shoulder with a trembling hand. "We must go, now. Call your ship, we have to leave." Da-hun did not move. He was watching the Alpha. The creature stepped forward. 1 step, then another. Slow, deliberate. Its tendrils stretched outward, sweeping across the open ground between the jungle and the outpost. It was reading them, their heartbeats, their body heat, the electrical signals in their muscles. It was choosing. Its head turned slowly from one person to the next. It passed over the Rethians without interest. It paused on Hana, then Jisok, then Yeren, and then it stopped. It was looking directly at Da-hun. The tendrils beneath its jaw pointed toward him like blue fingers, and a low sound came from deep inside its chest, a vibration so deep it was more felt than heard. It shook the ground under their feet. The Alpha had made its choice. Vorath's voice was a terrified whisper. "It has chosen you. Once it chooses, it does not stop. It will hunt you until you are dead. You must run. You must leave this planet now." Do-hyun looked at Vorath, then back at the Alpha. The massive creature stood motionless in the blue glow of its own tendrils, patient and certain. It had never lost. It had never needed to. Yeren activated the emergency channel. Commander Tolek's voice came through instantly, sharp and tense. He had been monitoring their signals. "I am ordering you to evacuate immediately," Tolek said. "Get to your ship and leave. That is a direct order." Do-hyun reached up and turned off the communicator. Then he did something that made no sense to the Rethians, to Tolek, and to every species that would later hear this story. He smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was not a brave face hiding fear. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting for this. A quiet, steady smile that reached his eyes and stayed there. He looked at the Alpha Vashta. 15 meters of armored death, the undisputed king of a world that killed everything. And he spoke. "Let's see who hunts who." The Alpha beast chose its target. The human smiled. "Let's see who hunts who." Part 3, The Long Game. The first night passed without an attack. The Alpha stood at the tree line for 3 hours, watching, reading, and then it turned and melted back into the jungle without a sound. It did not need to rush. In its world, the hunt was already over the moment it chose its prey. Everything after that was just time. Do-hun knew this, and he intended to use that patience against it. At dawn, he gathered the team inside the outpost's ruined main hall. The Rethian survivors sat in the corner, wrapped in thermal blankets Hana had given them, still shaking. They had not stopped shaking since the Alpha appeared. "Here is what we know," Do-hun said. He was calm, the way a river is calm before it drops off a cliff. "The Alpha is smart, smarter than the Union files say. It studied the Rethians for weeks before it attacked. It learned their patterns, found their weaknesses, and broke them apart in one night." He paused. "That means it thinks like a hunter. It watches. It waits. It expects its prey to act like prey, to run, hide, or freeze." "So what do we do?" Jisoo asked. "We do what humans have always done," Do-hyun said. We hunt it back. Voroth looked up from his corner. That is insane. You cannot hunt an alpha. Nothing hunts an alpha. Do-hyun looked at him. On our homeworld, humans did not evolve to be the strongest animal. We were not the fastest. We did not have claws or armor or venom. But we became the top predator on the entire planet. Do you know how? Voroth said nothing. We never stopped. Every other predator on Earth could outrun us in a short chase. But no animal on Earth could outrun a human over a long distance. We would follow our prey for hours, sometimes days, walking, jogging, tracking. The prey would sprint away, stop to rest, and then see us coming again, and again, and again, until it collapsed from exhaustion. That is what a human is. We are not a sprint predator. We are a persistence predator. And no creature in the galaxy has been hunted by one of us before. The room was silent. Even the jungle outside seemed to listen. We are not going to fight the alpha head-on, Do-hyun continued. We are going to make its life miserable. We are going to take away its rest, its confidence, and its control. We are going to make it react to us instead of the other way around. And we are going to do it until it makes a mistake. He looked at each of his team. Jisok, I need noise traps and flash charges spread through the jungle in a 1-kilometer radius around us. Every time the alpha or its pack settles somewhere, I want them disturbed. No rest, no safe zone. Jisok grinned. I have been waiting for someone to say that. The alpha hunts using bioelectric senses. Those tendrils read electromagnetic fields, heartbeats, muscle signals, body heat. I need you to find a way to fake those signals. Decoys, false targets. Make the alpha chase ghosts. Hana was already thinking. I can modify the medical scanners to emit human pattern electromagnetic pulses. It will not fool it forever, but it will confuse it. That is all I need. Confusion and time. He turned to Yeren. The Vashta communicate. You said you detected patterns in their signals. I need you to map those patterns. I want to know how the alpha gives orders to its pack, and I want to know what those orders mean. Yeren nodded. I have already started. Their signals are complex. It will take time. You have 3 days, Do-hyun said. That is how long I plan to run this. And what will you be doing? Hana asked. Do-hyun picked up his rifle and his pack. I am going to introduce myself to the alpha, properly. For the next 3 days, Korath 9 became a different kind of battlefield. Not the fast, violent kind. The slow, grinding kind. The kind that broke things from the inside. Jisiok worked without sleep. He planted 37 devices across the jungle. Motion-triggered flash charges that detonated in bursts of blinding white light. Sound grenades that screamed at frequencies painful to the Vashta's sensitive hearing. And electromagnetic scramblers that turned the alpha's bioelectric senses into static. Every time the Vashta pack tried to gather, to rest, to regroup, something went off. An explosion of light here. A piercing shriek there. The jungle, which had been their kingdom, became a minefield of disruption. Hana built her decoys from medical equipment and salvaged parts. Small devices, no bigger than a fist, that pulsed with the electromagnetic signature of a human heartbeat. She placed them throughout the jungle on random timers. The alpha would sense a human, stalk toward it, and find nothing. Just a small box humming in the undergrowth. The first time it happened, the alpha destroyed the device with a single blow. The second time, it hesitated. By the 5th time, it was spending hours circling each signal, unable to trust its own senses. Yeren sat in the outpost's ruined communication room with her headset on, listening to the Vashta's signals day and night. She filled pages with notes, mapping the frequencies, the rhythms, the patterns. She discovered that the alpha did not just lead the pack, it controlled them with precise signal bursts, like a general issuing battlefield commands. She identified the signal for gather, the signal for hold, and most importantly, the signal for attack. she was learning their language. And Do-hyun hunted. He went into the jungle alone, every day at dawn, and did not return until dark. He tracked the Alpha on foot, following its massive footprints through the mud, reading the broken branches and crushed undergrowth it left behind. He was not trying to catch it. He was trying to be seen. He would find where the Alpha had rested, and leave something behind, a piece of cloth with his scent, a small fire pit still warm with embers, a mark carved into a tree, messages, not in any language the Alpha could read, but in a language every predator understood. I was here. I found you. I am not afraid. The first day, the Alpha ignored him. It continued its slow patrol, circling the outpost at a distance, waiting for the humans to break. The second day, the Alpha changed its route. It moved away from one of its usual resting sites, the one where Do-hyun had left a burning torch the night before. It was a small change, but Do-hyun noticed it. The Alpha was adjusting to him, reacting. For a creature that had never needed to react to anything, this was the first crack. By the third day, the Alpha was agitated. Jisuk's traps kept it awake, Hana's decoys kept it confused, and Do-hyun kept appearing in places it did not expect. Sitting on a ridge above its trail, standing at the edge of a clearing it had just crossed, always watching, always calm. Commander Tolek monitored everything from orbit. On the first day, he had sent mocking messages about the foolishness of fighting a death-world predator with noisemakers and tricks. On the second day, he had gone quiet. On the third day, he contacted them with a single question. Is it working? Yes, Yeren replied. In the outpost, the Rethian survivors watched the humans come and go, with something between disbelief and awe. Vorath approached Hana on the third evening as she repaired a damaged decoy. Your leader, he said carefully. He goes into the jungle alone every day. He faces the most dangerous predator on this planet, with nothing but a rifle and his feet. How is he not afraid? Hana did not stop working. She did not even look up, but she smiled, just slightly. He is terrified, she said. He just does not let it matter. Vorath stared at her for a long moment, as if she had spoken in a language he did not understand. That night, Yeren intercepted something new. A cascade of Vashta signals, sharp and fast, spreading outward from the Alpha's position like ripples in water. Not just the nearby pack members, all of them. Every Vashta within range was receiving the same signal. Gather. Converge. All of them. Yeren pulled off her headset and ran to find Do-hyun. He was sitting at the outpost wall, cleaning his rifle in the blue glow of the jungle. It is calling the full pack, she said. Every one of them, dozens. They are all coming here. Do-hyun stopped cleaning. He looked out at the dark jungle, at the distant glow of bioluminescent trees, and the shadows moving between them. Then he nodded. Good, he said. That means it is scared. The Alpha beast chose its target. The human smiled. Let's see who hunts who. Part 4. The Trap. Do-hyun had planned for this. From the moment he decided to hunt the Alpha instead of running from it, he knew the creature would eventually stop playing the patient game and throw everything it had at them. A cornered predator was dangerous, but a predator that had never been cornered before, that was predictable. It would bring every claw, every tooth, every body it commanded, and it would try to crush the problem in one massive strike. That was exactly what Do-hyun wanted. A scattered pack is impossible to fight, he told the team that night as they prepared. They come from every direction, they hit and retreat, and you spend all your energy chasing shadows. But a gathered pack, moving together toward one point, that can be funneled. That can be trapped. Hana had scanned the terrain within 5 kilometers of the outpost, and one feature stood out. A narrow volcanic ravine 2 kilometers to the east. It was deep, roughly 300 meters long, with steep walls of black rock, on both sides. The floor was flat and wide enough for the Vashta to move through, but the walls created a channel. Anything that entered from one end had only two choices: keep going forward or turn back. "Jiseok," Do-hyun said, "how long do you need?" Jiseok studied the map. His eyes moved along the ravine walls, calculating distances, angles, stress points. 2 days to do it right. I can rig shape charges along the walls to trigger rockfalls in sequence. Electromagnetic disruptors at the choke points. Collapse triggers at 3 separate sections to split the ravine into segments. He looked up. I will need every charge I have left. Everything. Use it all. Hana leaned over the map. I can place them at the ravine entrance and along the first 100 meters. If I set them to pulse at different intervals, it will pull the pack inward. They will follow the signals, thinking they are chasing us. Do it, Do-hyun said. He turned to Yeren. The Alpha commands the pack with signals. When the pack enters the ravine, I need you to monitor those signals in real time. I need to know when the Alpha gives the attack order, and I need to know its position at every moment. Yeren nodded. I can do that. But Do-hyun, the Alpha is not stupid. It let its pack go first at the outpost. It stayed back and watched. It might do the same thing here. I am counting on it, Do-hyun said. They had 2 days. They used every hour. Jiseok worked in the ravine like a man possessed. He climbed the walls with ropes and anchors, planting charges in the cracks between the volcanic rock with the precision of a surgeon and the speed of someone who knew that every minute mattered. He rigged 3 collapse zones, sections of the ravine wall that would bring down tons of rock onto the floor below when detonated. Between the collapse zones, he placed electromagnetic disruptors, devices that would overwhelm the Vashta's bioelectric senses with a wall of static, blinding them the way a flashbang blinded human eyes. Hana placed her decoys along the ravine floor and at the entrance, hiding them under rocks and in cracks. She tuned each one to pulse with a slightly different human signature, different heartbeats, different body temperatures. To the Vashta's senses, the ravine would feel like it was full of humans. Yeren set up a monitoring station on the ridge above the ravine, hidden behind a rock outcrop with a clear view of the jungle approach. From there, she could track every Vashta signal within 2 kilometers. Do-hyun spent the 2 days doing something else entirely. He went back into the jungle, back to the Alpha's territory, back to being seen. He needed the Alpha angry. He needed it frustrated beyond reason, so he pushed harder than before. He found the Alpha's current resting site, a shallow cave beneath a rock shelf, and he built a fire at its entrance. He carved marks into the trees along its patrol route. He walked its trails openly, leaving footprints in the mud beside its own massive tracks. Small human boot prints next to prints the size of a car. The Alpha followed him twice. Both times, Do-hyun let it get close. Close enough to see him. Close enough to feel its bioelectric tendrils reaching for his heartbeat. And then, he disappeared into terrain the massive creature could not easily follow. Dense rock formations. Narrow gaps between boulders. Places where being small was an advantage. By the end of the second day, the Vashta pack was on the move. Yeren counted the signals from her ridge position. 26 individual Vashta, plus the Alpha. They were converging from every direction, drawn by the Alpha's command signal, moving toward the human scent that had soaked into the jungle over 3 days of Do-hyun's relentless tracking. The team moved to their positions at dusk. The Rethian survivors were placed in a sealed section of the outpost with enough supplies for 3 days, and a beacon that would activate if the team did not return. Forath grabbed Do-hyun's arm before he left. "You are going to die out there," the Rethian said. It was not a warning. It sounded like a fact. Do-hyun looked at him. Maybe, but not quietly. The night was moonless. The jungle glowed blue and green with bioluminescence, and the air was thick with humidity and the smell of volcanic sulfur from the ravine. Do-hyun took his position at the ravine entrance, standing in the open, visible, a single human shape against the dark rock. He was the bait. They came out of the jungle like a wave. The pack emerged from the tree line in a spread formation, 26 bodies of bone plate and muscle, their tendrils glowing bright blue as they swept the air for signals. Hana's decoys were working. The Vashta sensed humans everywhere, in the ravine, on the rocks, in the gaps between boulders. The signals drew them forward, and the pack funneled into the ravine mouth without hesitation. Yaren's voice came through the communicator, tight and controlled. They are inside. First section, 18 targets. Second wave entering now. 8 more. And the Alpha? Do-hyun asked. A pause. Holding position at the tree line. Watching. Of course it was. Do it, Do-hyun said. Jisok pressed the first trigger. The first collapse zone brought down a wall of volcanic rock that sealed the ravine entrance behind the pack, cutting off their retreat. The Vashta inside screamed, a sound like metal tearing, and surged forward. They hit the first electromagnetic disruptor, and the blue glow of their tendrils flickered and died. For a few seconds, the creatures were blind, stumbling, crashing into each other. Jisiok hit the second trigger, another collapse, this one in the middle of the ravine, splitting the pack in half. Rocks the size of vehicles fell from the walls and crushed 2 Vashta instantly. The rest scrambled, clawing at the walls, trying to climb out. The third trigger brought down the far end. The ravine was now 3 sealed boxes of rock and dust, with the Vashta trapped inside. But they were not dead. They were wounded, confused, and furious, and they began tearing at the rockfalls with their massive claws. This was not meant to kill them all. It was meant to break the pack. And it did. Yaren tracked the signals as the trapped Vashta began sending out distress calls. Desperate, scattered, no longer coordinated. The Alpha's command structure was shattered. Individuals panicked and fought each other in the confined space. Some managed to climb the ravine walls and escape into the jungle, but they ran in different directions, no longer a pack, just frightened animals. In 20 minutes, it was over. The ravine was silent, except for the settling of dust and the distant crashes of fleeing Vashta. Jisiok let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like an hour. Hana checked her scanner. Most of the biosigns were moving away, fast, scattering into the deep jungle. But one signal remained, stationary, at the tree line. The Alpha had not moved. It had watched its entire pack walk into a trap. And now it stood alone in the dark, its tendrils glowing brighter than ever, and its ancient eyes were locked on one point. Do-hyun. He stood at the ravine entrance, covered in dust, breathing hard. He looked back at the Alpha across 200 meters of open ground. The creature did not roar. It did not charge. It simply began to walk forward, slow, heavy, each step shaking the ground. It was done waiting. It was done sending others. It would finish this itself. Do-hyun looked at the plasma blade on his belt and the single concussion charge in his vest. Then he looked at his team on the ridge above. "Stay up there," he said into the communicator. Yaren's voice crackled back instantly. "Do-hyun, do not—" He turned off the communicator and stepped down from the ridge toward the ravine floor. The Alpha watched him come. One human, walking toward it. Not hiding. Walking. They stood 50 meters apart in the settling dust, the glow of the jungle behind the Alpha, and the dark rock behind the human. 2 hunters, 1 ravine. The jungle held its breath. The Academy board chamber was the largest room on Station Yolvari. It had been built in a wide circle, with tiered seating rising around a central floor, so that representatives from every species could see each other clearly. The designers had intended it to feel open and democratic. Today, it felt like an arena. Every seat was filled. 12 species, each with their delegates and advisors and aides, arranged in a ring of faces that ranged from anxious to hostile. The Varathi delegation sat on the upper tier, Dren at the center, his data tablet resting on his knee. The Sauron contingent was clustered together, their feathered crests twitching with nervous energy. The small Pelori huddled in their seats, barely visible above the railing. In the far section, Commander Orath sat alone, his massive frame making the reinforced chair beneath him creak. Yuna sat in the lower tier, with Teho and Doyun. She was wearing her standard academy uniform. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked calm, but Teho, who had spent enough time with her to know, could see the tension in her shoulders. She hadn't slept much in the 3 days since the incident. None of them had. Hana stood on the central floor. She was the only one standing. Dren presented first. He was thorough. He was organized. He was devastating. He showed footage of Revek's arrival, the snarling, the lunging, the fear response he triggered in every species present. He presented injury reports from Revek's previous handlers. He cited statistics on Kalshi aggression rates, predator species incident logs, and the formal risk assessments that 3 separate species had submitted before the program began. "The evidence is clear," Dren said, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. "This species is fundamentally incompatible with cooperative integration. The cub is dangerous. The human handler's methods are unscientific and reckless. The Academy has a duty to protect its students and staff, and it has failed that duty by allowing this experiment to continue." He sat down. Several delegations nodded. Hana waited until the room was completely still. Then she stepped forward. "Inspector Dren has shown you what Rivik was," she said. "I'd like to show you what he is." She activated the display behind her. Teho's data filled the screen, weeks of behavioral metrics arranged in clean, simple charts. Aggression frequency, declining steadily from day 1. Voluntary proximity to handler, increasing. Threat displays toward non-handler species, reduced by 80%. Feeding behavior, normalized. Stress indicators, the lowest they had been since his parents' death. "This is 4 weeks of data," Hana said. "Collected daily, verified independently, reviewed by Commander Orath and our own team. Every indicator points in the same direction. The cub is not getting more dangerous. He is getting better." She changed the display. The chamber went quiet. It was the footage from the sneeze. Rivik, leaping to his feet, spinning toward the door, placing himself between Yuna and the perceived threat. The growl aimed outward, the body positioned to protect. Hana let the clip play twice. Then she paused it on a single frame. Rivik's body between Yuna and the door. Every muscle tensed, every instinct focused on keeping her safe. "This is a predator cub," Hana said, "who was orphaned, traumatized, and alone, who had been treated as a threat by every species he encountered, who had no reason to trust anyone. And after 4 weeks with a human handler, his first instinct when he heard a loud noise was not to attack. It was to protect." She turned to face the Varathi delegation directly. Inspector Dren walked into that cub's safe space, unannounced, with armed escorts and active weapons. He violated every protocol this academy has established. And when the cub reacted, exactly the way any frightened child would react to strangers with weapons, he used that reaction as evidence that the child is dangerous. Dren shifted in his seat. "The subject." "His name is Rivik," Hana said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. She turned back to the full chamber. "I understand the fear," she said. "I do. The Kalshi are predators. Their cubs are strong and fast and loud. And when they growl, something in your brain tells you to run. I understand why that's frightening. Every species in this room evolved to survive, and survival often means avoiding things with big teeth. She paused. She looked around the circle of faces. Alien faces, some feathered, some scaled, some furred, all watching her. But humans evolved to survive too, and somewhere along the way, we learned something different. She changed the display one more time. It was not data, it was not footage from the Academy. It was an old image, ancient by galactic standards. A cave painting from Earth, tens of thousands of years old, showing a human figure standing beside a four-legged animal. A wolf. 40,000 years ago, on Earth, a wolf walked to the edge of a human campfire, Hannah said. Wolves were predators. They were dangerous. They had teeth and claws and every reason to see humans as food, and humans had every reason to drive them away. The chamber was silent. Even Dren was watching. But someone, some ancient, stubborn, probably terrified human, looked at that wolf and thought, maybe you don't have to be alone. Maybe we don't have to be enemies. Maybe, if I'm patient enough, and brave enough, and stubborn enough, you'll sit down beside me. Hannah's voice was steady, but Yuna, watching from the lower tier, could see the emotion in her eyes. That wolf became the dog. It became our guardian, our partner, our family, not because we tamed it, not because we forced it, because we chose to understand it. We chose to see past the fangs and the growl and the fear, and we found something worth caring about underneath. She looked at Dren. You see a predator, she said. We see a kid who lost his family and doesn't know how to ask for help. She looked at the full chamber. That's not a threat. That's a tragedy. And this is what humanity does. We sit by the fire and we wait. The silence that followed lasted a long time. Yuna realized she was holding Tejo's hand. She didn't remember reaching for it. He was holding hers back, his grip tight. The board voted. The Varathi voted against, and 2 other delegations joined them. But the rest, 9 of 12, including the Sauron, whose representative Velnus cast her vote with a trembling hand and a firm voice, voted to continue the program. Rivek stayed. The weeks that followed were different. The tension on the station didn't disappear overnight, but it shifted. Species that had avoided Rivek's wing began walking through it. Not closely, not yet, but they walked through. They looked through the observation glass. They watched Yuna work with him. And slowly, carefully, they began to approach. The first was a Pelori, one of the small, timid, rodent-like creatures who had been the most terrified of Rivek from the beginning. His name was something unpronounceable, and he was barely half a meter tall, and he stood outside the observation room for 3 days before he finally asked Yuna if he could come inside. She told Rivek what was happening, in simple, clear words. Rivek watched the tiny creature enter the room with an expression that Yuna could only describe as confused. The Pelori sat in the far corner, trembling violently. Rivek looked at Yuna. Yuna nodded at him. The cub lowered his head, made himself as small as he could, and very carefully lay down flat on the floor, as unthreatening as a Kalshi could possibly be. The Pelori stopped trembling. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was a start. The joint training exercise was held at the end of the 6th week. For the first time, Rivek was in a room with multiple species at once. He was tense. He growled twice. He stayed close to Yuna and kept his eyes moving. But he didn't lunge. He didn't snarl. When a Sauron trainee accidentally dropped a metal tray with a loud clatter, Rivek flinched, looked at Yuna, and settled back down. He was smiling for the first time in weeks. After the exercise, Commander Orath approached Yuna. The other species parted around him like water around a boulder. He stopped in front of her, and she had to look up, way up, to meet his golden eyes. He bowed his head. It was a Kalshi gesture, Yuna knew, one reserved for the deepest respect, one that warriors gave to those who had shown extraordinary courage. He had never made this gesture toward a non-Kalshi in his life. My people feared, Orath said slowly, that no species in this galaxy would ever see our young as anything but monsters. His voice was rough with something Yuna had never heard from him before. You saw a child. Yuna looked up at him, this towering predator, this warrior who could crush her with one hand, who was standing before her with his head bowed and his voice breaking. She smiled. That's because he is one, she said. Orath held her gaze for a long moment. Then he straightened. He turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy on the station floor, and Yuna watched him go. Behind her, she heard a soft padding of paws. She turned. Rivik was standing there, looking up at her with those golden eyes. His ears were up, his hackles were down, his tail was moving, that slow, hesitant swing that meant comfort, that meant safety, that meant something that maybe in time would mean love. Yuna crouched down in front of him. She held out her hand. Rivik pressed his head into her palm, warm and solid and alive. Come on, she said. Let's go home. They walked down the corridor together, the human woman and the predator cub, side by side, their footsteps echoing softly through the station. Behind them, a dozen species watched from doorways and windows and observation posts, and not one of them was afraid. Across the galaxy, species built walls against what they feared. Humans built campfires and waited to see who would sit down beside them.